The first thing Dr. Amelia Harper noticed when she entered Thomas Whitmore's flat was the smell. Not death. She'd expected that. But this was different. Antiseptic. Bleach so strong it burned her nostrils even through the N95 mask. The walls were spotless, gleaming white, stripped of paint in places where he'd scrubbed too hard. The furniture was pushed against the windows, wrapped in plastic sheeting sealed with what must have been 30 rolls of tape. Thomas Whitmore lay in the center of the empty sitting room floor. His skin was gone. "Chemical burns," the lead detective said, his voice muffled behind his mask. "Medical examiner reckons he used industrial-grade disinfectant. Started with his hands, then his arms, his face, kept going until..." He gestured vaguely at the body. Amelia crouched down, careful not to disturb the scene. Thomas's fingers were worn to the bone in places. She'd read his file on the drive over. Diagnosed OCD, germaphobe, but managing it well with therapy and medication. Worked as an accountant. No history of psychosis, no warning signs. "Who found him?" Amelia asked. "Neighbor. Said she heard him screaming for hours, thought he was being attacked. When police arrived, he was still conscious, still scrubbing, begging them not to let the contamination spread." Amelia stood, her legs aching. The room felt smaller than it should, the walls too close. She shook her head, ignoring the creeping sensation. Just stress. She'd been working 18-hour days since arriving in Manchester 3 days ago. 3 days, 11 bodies. Her phone buzzed. Another case. She read the address and closed her eyes. The Arndale Center. Public space. If this was spreading the way she feared, "I need to go," she said. The woman's name was Claire Pemberton, 28, marketing executive. She died in the ladies' toilets on the second floor, wedged into the corner of a stall, her body contorted at impossible angles. "Claustrophobia," the paramedic said quietly. "Must have been. She crushed herself trying to make the space bigger. Broke her own ribs, her spine. Witnesses said she was screaming that the walls were closing in." Amelia stared at the cramped stall. Standard size, maybe a meter square. Claire was a healthy woman, athletic build. It would have taken tremendous force, self-inflicted force, to cause that kind of damage. Did anyone touch her? Try to help? Security guard tried to pull her out. He's in hospital now, sedated. What happened to him? The paramedic shifted uncomfortably. Started screaming that he couldn't breathe, that the air was thick, solid. They've got him on oxygen, but his levels are fine. He won't stop panicking. Amelia felt the walls shift, just slightly, just enough to notice. She stepped out of the stall, into the bathroom, but the ceiling seemed lower than before. The fluorescent lights closer to her head. She left quickly. By day 7, the hospitals were overflowing. Amelia stood in the conference room at the Royal Infirmary, staring at the board covered with photographs and case notes. Red string connected victims, locations, timelines. It looked like the work of a madman. It felt like they were becoming madmen. "We've got a pattern," Dr. James Hartley, the neurologist assigned to her team, said. His hands trembled slightly as he pointed to the timeline. Exposure to an infected individual leads to adoption of their phobia within 48 hours. The nurse who treated Thomas Whitmore is now in isolation, compulsively washing her hands. She's already stripped 3 layers of skin. "Contagious fear," Amelia murmured. "That's impossible." "So is this," James gestured to the mounting cases. "We've got healthcare workers developing phobias they never had. Family members, first responders. It's spreading through proximity to the infected during their episodes." Amelia stared at the board. Arachnophobia, acrophobia, trypophobia, aquaphobia. Every fear imaginable amplified to fatal extremes.
A construction worker with acrophobia had climbed a crane and jumped, convinced he was falling anyway. A chef with trypophobia had clawed holes into her own arms, trying to dig out the imaginary cavities she saw in her skin. "Where's the research facility?" Amelia asked, her voice tight. "Salford, about 3 miles from here. They shut it down 4 weeks ago, abandoned it. We need to get there now." James stared at her. "Amelia, are you all right? You look—" "I'm fine." But she wasn't. The room was shrinking. She could feel it. The door seemed further away even as she walked toward it. "Get me the address. I'll meet you downstairs." She didn't wait for his response. The lift felt like a coffin. Amelia pressed herself against the wall, breathing slowly through her nose. The metal box descended, and with each floor the space seemed to contract. The walls inched closer, the ceiling pressed down. By the time the doors opened on the ground floor, she nearly fell out, gasping. Mild claustrophobia. She'd had it since childhood, an incident with a broken lift when she was 9. She'd learned to manage it, therapy, breathing exercises. She took the stairs when possible, but lifts were tolerable. Until now.
James was waiting by his car, holding a file folder. "I've got the address, but Amelia, I really think you should—" "I'm infected, aren't I?" she said quietly. His silence was answer enough. "How long do I have?" "Based on the progression we've seen, 72 hours from first symptoms, maybe less." He paused. "When did you first notice?" "Thomas Whitmore's flat, 3 days ago." James closed his eyes. "Then we need to move fast." The Neurogen Solutions facility squatted on the outskirts of Salford like a concrete tumor. Abandoned, windows dark. The car park was empty except for a single vehicle covered in grime and birds' droppings. Amelia approached the building, each step feeling heavier than the last. The structure loomed above her, but it was the space inside that terrified her. Narrow corridors, small rooms, labs and offices designed for efficiency, not comfort. She could already feel them closing in. "According to the documents, the research is in the basement laboratory, sublevel 2. Of course it was. The front doors were unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. Amelia's breathing quickened as they moved down the main corridor. The walls seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, contracting like a throat swallowing them down. "Amelia," James grabbed her arm, "you need to focus. We're here for the research. Anything that might tell us how to reverse this." She nodded, not trusting her voice. They found the stairwell. The door was heavy, resistant. When it finally opened, darkness yawned below. The stairs descended into nothing, and Amelia felt her legs lock. "I can go," James offered. "You can wait here." "No," she forced herself forward. "I need to see it myself." Each step down was agony. The stairwell narrowed, or seemed to. The walls crept inward with each landing. By the time they reached sublevel 1, Amelia was pressed against James, unable to convince herself there was space to walk normally. Sublevel 2 was worse. The corridor was tight, deliberately tight, maybe 2 meters wide, low ceiling, stretching into shadow. Doors lined both sides, each one a potential trap. Amelia's vision swam. The walls were breathing now, expanding and contracting, closing the gap between them inch by inch. "There," James pointed, "to a door at the end, main laboratory." Amelia couldn't move. Her feet were rooted. The corridor was collapsing, the ceiling descending, the floor rising to meet it. She would be crushed, flattened, compressed into nothing. "It's not real," she whispered. "It's not real." But it was. She could feel the walls touching her shoulders now, the ceiling brushing her hair. James grabbed her hand. "Amelia, listen to me. You're a scientist. You know what's happening.
The pathogen is affecting your amygdala, your perception, but the corridor is the same size it was when we entered. You need to... A sound echoed from deeper in the building, a wet, dragging sound, and then a voice, high and thin. "Help me, please! The water, it's rising!" James went rigid. That's not possible. The building's been abandoned for weeks." The voice came again, closer now. "I can't breathe. I'm drowning. Please." Amelia recognized it. The cadence, the accent. "That's Claire Pemberton. She's dead, Amelia. She died 4 days ago." "I know, but the voice was unmistakable. It's the disease. It's showing us." Another voice joined the first, male, screaming. "They're everywhere! On me! In me! Get them off!" Thomas Whitmore. Then more, a chorus of the dead, each crying out their final terrors. The walls amplified the sounds, bouncing them back and forth until the corridor was filled with desperate, dying screams. "We need to leave," James said, his voice shaking. "Now!" But Amelia was already moving forward, through the crushing corridor, past the phantom voices, toward the laboratory door. Because she understood now, the disease didn't just amplify fear, it fed on it, it learned from it. And if patient zero had been here, if the source was still here... She reached the door, pushed it open. The laboratory was vast, impossibly vast, a cathedral of space that couldn't possibly exist beneath the building. The ceiling soared into darkness, the walls stretched away into shadow, and in the center, surrounded by medical equipment, was a chair. Someone sat in it. Amelia approached slowly. The figure didn't move. As she drew closer, she saw the restraints, the IV lines, the monitoring equipment still blinking, still recording. Simon Ashworth, patient zero. He was alive. His eyes found hers, clear, lucid, aware. "You came," he whispered. "I knew someone would, eventually." "What did you do?" Amelia breathed. Simon smiled. It was a terrible smile. "I cured myself." "That's impossible. Everyone who's infected dies. Yes, everyone but me." He gestured weakly at the equipment. "Do you know what the opposite of claustrophobia is, Dr. Harper?" She didn't answer. "It's agoraphobia, fear of open spaces, fear of having no walls, no boundaries, no limits." His eyes glittered. Neurogen wanted to eliminate fear, but fear is fundamental. You can't remove it. You can only redirect it. The vast room suddenly made horrible sense.
"You transferred your phobia," Amelia said, "into everyone else. You made them afraid so you wouldn't have to be. I made them afraid of containment, of boundaries, of limits." Simon's smile widened. "And in doing so, I gave myself infinite space. Can you feel it, Doctor? How small you're becoming, how the world is pressing in on you." Amelia looked around the laboratory. It was shrinking now, the walls racing inward, the ceiling plummeting down. "That's how it works," Simon continued. "The more people it infects, the more fear it generates, the more space it creates for me. Every person who dies in terror of confinement expands my world. I'm free, Doctor, completely, utterly free." "You're killing people," James said from the doorway. "Hundreds of people. Thousands soon. Millions if it spreads far enough." Simon closed his eyes peacefully. "And every death makes my cage a little bigger." The room was collapsing. Amelia could barely stand. The walls were an arm's length away now. James was shouting something, but she couldn't hear it over the roaring in her ears. She looked at the IV line, the equipment keeping Simon alive, keeping him conscious, keeping him feeding on the fear of everyone he'd infected. Her hand found the tube. "If you kill me, it doesn't stop," Simon calmly said. "The pathogen is self-sustaining now. It'll spread and spread and spread. You can't contain it." "No," Amelia said, "but I can starve it." She pulled. The monitor screamed. The IV line disconnected. Simon's eyes went wide, not with fear, but with rage. "You don't understand," he hissed. "Without me to anchor it, the fear has nowhere to go. It'll just—" The earth inverted. Amelia felt it happen. The walls that had been crushing inward suddenly reversed, flying outward at impossible speed. The laboratory exploded into infinite space. No walls, no ceiling, no floor, just vast, endless, terrible openness in every direction. Agoraphobia. Simon's cure had become his prison, and now, dying, he was dragging everyone infected into it with him. James grabbed Amelia's arm, but she could barely feel it. The world was expanding, accelerating, tearing itself apart into boundless nothing. She was falling up and down and sideways all at once, untethered, uncontained, dissolving into space that went on forever and ever and They found Dr. Amelia Harper 3 days later in the basement of the Neurogen Solutions facility. She was sitting against the wall of the laboratory, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself. Her eyes were open but unseeing. She didn't respond to voice or touch. The medical team noted that she'd wedged herself into the corner of the room, the smallest possible space, and hadn't moved since. When they tried to extract her, she screamed, a sound of pure, primal terror. In her hand was a syringe, empty. The pathogen analysis would later confirm what she'd done in those final moments. She'd found Simon Ashworth's original treatment, the one that had started everything, and she'd injected herself with a massive dose. Not to cure herself, to contain it. Dr. James Hartley was the only one who understood. He'd read her research notes, found in the laboratory. She'd realized the truth, that the phobophage needed an anchor. Someone's fear was strong enough, concentrated enough to trap the spreading terror. Amelia Harper now lived in the smallest space imaginable, the prison of her own mind, where the walls were always closing in, where every breath was suffocation, where the world compressed tighter and tighter and tighter into an infinitesimal point. And inside that point, she held every infected person's amplified fear, containing it, preventing it from spreading. She would remain there forever, conscious, aware, experiencing claustrophobia so intense it made death seem merciful. The outbreak stopped that day. The infected recovered, their phobias fading back to manageable levels. The city breathed again, and in a locked psychiatric facility, in a padded room exactly 2 meters square, Dr. Amelia Harper sat in the corner of the room, whispering the same words over and over. "The walls are closing in. The walls are closing in. The walls are closing in." She'd saved everyone. She'd saved everyone but herself. And in the darkness of her mind, compressed into a space so small it might have been a coffin or a grave or simply the absence of all space entirely, she'd remain there forever, contained.